All right, everyone, 9:50. Welcome everyone out there to Higher Ed Dream In and today's presentation, Salesforce and Corporate Relations, A Journey to Complete Data. We're excited to have Nick Lindberg with us here today. I'm going to introduce him to you all and then turn it over for the presentation. So for those of you who don't know Nick, he has been a Salesforce user since 2009, starting as an accidental admin for Students Today, Leaders Forever, based out of Minneapolis. He quickly helped co-found the Twin Cities nonprofit Salesforce user group in 2010. Nick likes to believe if you can dream it, you can do it in Salesforce. At Dreamforce in 2014, he took that to heart, presenting how he created an app called DragForce to track his passion outside of work, drag racing in 85 Camaro. Nick holds 7 certifications, is a member of the MVP Hall of Fame, and is a co-organizer of the Midwest Dreamin' Conference. Everyone, welcome Nick Lindberg.
Hey everybody, excited to be here today. This is really exciting to just be here with you all and just be talking Salesforce, because who doesn't love Salesforce? Let's give it up for Carrie for the keynote that we just all came from. That was very fun, and it's always fun when you have a Dr. CRM talking, because you never know what she's going to share and what tidbits of information will be happening there. So that's super exciting. And Jackie, thanks so much for the intro there. I'll just keep the party started here in terms of what we got going here today. So we're going to talk about corporate relations today. This is a little bit more about me. Jackie gave a great bio about some of my backgrounds here. But we're really, I worked at the business school at the University of Minnesota. So we have a couple instances on campus. Specifically, though, I worked at the University of Minnesota Carlson School of Management, SkyMa, row the boat, all of those good things. We're doing a lot of different things, and we'll talk actually a lot about it today. So I'm not trying to talk too much about anything that's on this slide, because otherwise I'm just going to be talking about my presentation before we get into it. So let's get this underway. So first, a little story about how life was and how life may be looking for you. At our business school, we had a lot of silo departments. So in our case, our continuing ed or exec ed department was doing their own thing. Our research centers were doing their own thing. Our career center was doing their own thing. Experiential learning were doing all their own thing. Everyone was kind of doing their own thing. There's kind of Wild West. They maybe would meet like every 3 years and talk to one another. But outside of that, that was kind of what was happening there. Well, as I started to realize that was how it was happening, kind of the idea is you can only get a little bit of that picture when you're talking to one department or 2 departments. And so you get a little bit picture when you're looking at, say, from the exec ed angle. Or maybe you can get a little bit more of the picture when you're talking. So maybe the career center, in our case, the career center and experiential learning, they're actually talking a lot to each other. And so we can see a little bit of that better picture because those 2 are talking. But really, what we want to have is Mark Benioff in his entirety living the dream at Dreamforce. And that's really what we're trying to do here within the Carlson School. And maybe what you're trying to do too, get that whole picture of corporate relations, whether that be for an entity or a company or for an individual, for alumni relations too. Sometimes you want to have both of those. And really that has been our goal and what we kind of set forth to conquer from there. So what I like to do before I get into what we did, I like to kind of talk about another example of how Salesforce looks. And some of you may or may not have seen a slide very similar to this, a different Dreamforce or Summit keynotes and things like that. I've heard people call this as the Salesforce Power Stance. And so there's a student in this case, it's kind of all in their power stance here, and it kind of talks about how Salesforce can really be the anything and everything for you. And that is true, and I firmly believe that. And if you can dream it, you can do it. Yeah, let's make it happen. But let's talk about the reality here, where we have the recruiting system. Some of you are on Slate. We're on Slate. Other systems exist too. So you have a recruiting system. You have a student experience. You have One Stop in one system. You have your career services and Handshake, and you have other things that are happening for, say, Canvas and other stuff there. So systems, plural, for that student experience. And then if you're like me, you have the advancement world, and that's its own entity. So they have their own processes, their own procedures, their own systems that exist over there. And so while that connected campus dream is something that we all seek after, the reality of it is it can be tough. And so that's just want to level set that this is a tough journey. It's a lot to mental power as well as technological power to make all this stuff happen. So just power to you all to make this all happen going forward. So I wanted to share that. When we first got set up with Salesforce, probably 5-6 years ago now, someone came, one of the associate deans came to us and said, "Can you solve creating we call a real-time 3E, which is effectively just a 360-degree view of a particular entity that we're working with at a given time." So what the 3 E's stand for is education, engagement, and employment. And kind of the idea is when we were going to sit down with the business the dean or others are going to sit down with the business executives at these companies, they want to have a one-page snapshot of everything that we've done with them in, say, the last 5 years. And so everything from who's getting an MBA or has gotten an MBA from us, who's recently been hired, who are knowable alum that are working there, who are on boards. We have 30 different boards. And so who's on one of those boards, the giving history, what they've given to, how much have they given to, some of the key projects. Our school is very experiential, has a lot of different experiential programs. And so those projects are really key, and that gets listed in there. Also, we do a lot of site visits and a lot of case studies and things like that. So listing those. And lastly, we're bringing a lot of people to campus, whether it be for events or for courses. And so we want to have that all aggregated there. So that was our kind of marching orders, was solve this. Well, the reality for us was just like the previous slide here with that Salesforce Power Stance, there were systems, plural, that we were having to do with this. So for us, the education, a lot of that data lived in Slate. For an executive ed or a continuing ed department, that lived in a system of ours called Destiny One. For knowable alumni, there's not really anything that we could really crack the cookie on in terms of systems, because everyone's kind of got their own little pockets of who they're working with. And the second that you have that, someone's already changing their job. So LinkedIn kind of became that place that they were going for. And then when we started to document out where all this other stuff was, there was spreadsheets, and spreadsheets. Everything that we kind of started to realize was each department kind of had their own little spreadsheet to solve their different needs, whether that be the board, there's individual boards. So in the case of the board, that's 30 spreadsheets. In the case of the projects, say we have 5 to 10 different departments that are running projects, that's 5 to 10 different departments that are doing their own spreadsheets, tracking that out of. And so the person that had to aggregate this, which is about this time of the year, every year, it became so daunting and so many spreadsheets. And when we kind of set forth this idea, our first concept was spreadsheets. Like, really? We got to be kidding me. Like, what is this, 1985? Send me the fax machine, all right? Why are we using all these spreadsheets? And that we kind of tried to turn that frown upside down and started to think about that as the opportunity, going, there's no system that they're using right now. So we can try to help them and solve that by being able to create so many opportunities of creating that process and not just have that spreadsheet. Because a lot of times they had these spreadsheets of, say, the last 5 years, and each spreadsheet was in its own spreadsheet. And if they had to update something, they were updating all 5 of those. And so the more that we could try to get into that land of opportunity, going, you update it once, you don't have to do any further from that. And so this became our land of opportunity of really going after these spreadsheets. And so let's pause about those spreadsheets for a second, just for one moment. We're probably talking a lot about spreadsheets today because that's how we really trying to build stuff happen here. But I'm going to talk about our build as a whole. And really our build within our school was a field of dreams. I'm a big baseball fan. Go Dodgers. My son, who's 8, is really excited. He played for a Dodgers team this last summer, so he was very excited to cheer them on. Also, go Twins. Next year will maybe be better for us. But for Field of Dreams, kind of the idea of build it and they will come. And what we were really trying to achieve here was, as we started to meet with people and say, hey, what spreadsheets do you have? There's an element of like, oh, what are you doing here? What are you talking about? And so we kind of had some people kind of not necessarily wanting to talk to us right away. And that is okay. So we kind of went into our own little corner over here and started building stuff. And so what does that mean? Well, we started importing spreadsheets that people would share with us. We happened to get some integrations that an integration that someone happened to share with us and say, hey, here's something that we're doing right now that maybe could be related to us. In that situation, it was our grad leaders instance for our graduate career services department. They have their own instance of grad leaders, and so hey, let's play around this. Let's see what kind of integrations that we can have. And then as we started to import these spreadsheets, build some integrations, we started to develop this proof of concept that we could then start showing to people. And it just so happened that when we started taking these spreadsheets and building these integrations, we weren't just trying to take just that one row and maybe or two records that we can do the integration. We were trying to take that whole build there, or whole spreadsheet, whole integration. And so when we started to showcase this work, it wasn't a where do we go from here? It was more of a when do you want to start, because the data is there. And so really kind of that opportunity we had was trying to say, hey, we've built it, please come. And they started to come, and that was really powerful for us. So that's a bit about our build in terms of how we started. As we started to get into our departments and starting to get more particular projects, people's caught wind of that one integration or those two spreadsheets that we had, it became a grassroots build from there. And so every department that we started to onboard onto this, it really kind of tried to solve three main points. And so part A of that was trying to figure out what integrations do they have? What are the systems that they're having? In some situations, that was a Google form that they were collecting that went into a spreadsheet for some event RSVPs. Some situations, that was its own system. Other situations were some web form that was happening elsewhere. And so we're trying to figure out what was the data they were trying to integrate. And integration was be able to be really simplistic or more sophisticated. We also tried to figure out what processes are they trying to solve here. And so in some situations, that was talking through those spreadsheets that they had and trying to figure out what are the columns, what do these columns mean? And we learned that there's things like status columns and things like notes columns. And in some cases, we had actually our career services had a quite literal spreadsheet that they used to log all of their calls and emails within the spreadsheet. So when they got done talking to a company, they would all go to this shared spreadsheet and write down their notes. And so, well, we started to realize that was the spreadsheet itself was the process. And so we could figure out how can we solve that in Salesforce. In some cases, also, we found out that the integrations that we were working with, the integration itself had gaps in it. Maybe it was duplicative data. Maybe it was data that wasn't, it was 80% correct, but they needed some ways because to get 100%. And so we made processes in Salesforce to solve for that. The last part we really tried to focus on was reporting. So if we have this data, let's do something with it. And so we started to create departmental dashboards that these departments could use in Salesforce to then share with their own team. So maybe it would be a weekly update type of a dashboard that they could have. Or in some cases, it was dashboards that they're showing to the dean or others at the school and being able to do a lot from there. So really, when we did each of these departments, that was kind of how we onboarded. We talked about these 3 points. Some are very quick conversations. Some are very extensive conversations that took months, years to get going as well from there. But that's a bit about our build. Well, I think Carrie was talking about this in her keynote about how really Salesforce can be this place of aggregating. And that's really kind of the path or the vision that we've had and others have bought into as we continue on this grassroots model of how do we get these people into Salesforce using it. Really, the concept is all roads lead to Salesforce and all spreadsheets are going to be eliminated if you talk to Nick. I mean, that's kind of been the model. Every call I'm having with someone, I hear about these spreadsheets. I go, hey, I'm going to try to eliminate that spreadsheet. Or maybe it's at some point we're going to eliminate that spreadsheet, because words like eliminate and reduce can sometimes cause tension. So we try to pick and choose when we're using those words, but really be watchful of those. And so we also, when we're talking about these all roads lead to Salesforce, we were able to use some of our university tools that we had at our disposal. So for instance, Dell Boomi was a tool that we could have at our disposal for integrating the different tools like Handshake or Modern Campus, or in our case that we're a PeopleSoft school. So we integrate that stuff into Salesforce. And so we have Boomi to be at that. Your school may have something else, and that's totally fine. And there are a lot of different options that you can use to integrate those tools. We also had a lot of different, we have used a lot of different apps to, once the data is in Salesforce, to be able to enhance and update that information. So for instance, we're using D&B Connect to do a lot of standardizing of company data. And that becomes really powerful when it comes to reporting and trying to identify who are the people or who are the companies that are coming. We've built a lot of dashboards on like company size, whether it be revenue and employees, that have been really beneficial for us to help identify and categorize who are the key stakeholders that we are working with, who are the key stakeholders that we maybe are not thinking of, and be able to try to adjust some things on the front end when we're trying to identify those prospects from there. Speaking of prospects, we're using Sales Navigator to find those prospects. So that's a LinkedIn tool that we're doing a lot of information with, that we are using to prospect, whether it be for our exec ed department, the prospective students, for our MBA program, prospective students for that, as well as some of our, we have so many different experiential projects. I would say we probably have 50 to 60 experiential projects at our school in a given year. And so we're doing a lot of prospecting there of companies and individuals at said companies. And so Sales Navigator is coming really big there. We also have Apsona do deduping. Whenever you're in a database and you have integrations, datas are going to happen, or dupes are going to happen. And so Apsona is our way to dedupe those. And then also as a utility agent, we have, and as a way to get people into Salesforce, we are using Cirrus Insights as a way to allow people to get access to Salesforce, or to log their emails in Salesforce and kind of have Salesforce front of mind. And so one, they're logging, and two, it says a side panel there. And so it's kind of continuing to have Salesforce as a front of mind wherever we are at. The bonus of this all roads lead to Salesforce, as we've been talking to these different departments, one, those spreadsheets. If there's a word of the day that I'm going to say, it's going to be spreadsheets, and I won't say any more on that on this slide. The other part that we've had a bonus here is legacy systems. And I think the story for this is that when we initially did that integration that I was talking about, the initial integration with grad leaders, when we showcased it, ironically, the second comment that they said outside of, hey, that's awesome, is, hey, we're actually moving systems to Handshake in the next 6 months. So we're in the contract talks for that. And so what we learned from that is Salesforce can be a place to house those data points that maybe don't get migrated over. And that became a really powerful tool for us. So all roads lead to Salesforce, and you never know what will happen from there. Well, let's go back to that journey in terms of what that 3E looked like previously and how it now lives. And so really what it boils down to, we actually have a lot of different data points that now live in Salesforce. And so for instance, we're in the EDA model. And so we're using course connections for our executive ed department. And so that ironically, we have an integration with the modern campus that flows into Salesforce. They're standardizing, updating that data, getting it from 80% to 100% from there. So that becomes, we have now truth of source numbers in Salesforce for that. For the recruitment, thanks to Carrie Otto, who's one of the planning leaders for the Higher Ed Dreaming team. Her team and others at the University of Minnesota had a big project that we went through for a couple of years ago about company job offers and post-grad surveys, and specifically about post-grad survey about what offers are they having, are they continuing ed, where are they going post-graduation. Well, that became data points that we could then integrate into our Salesforce instance. So now we have live data about where students are going, where they're getting placed. And so we can then pull up a given company and say, how many job offers have we had in the last 2, 3, 5 years, very simply, because of that integration that's in place. Our board leaders has been a really big win for us. And this is actually where we're really breaking down a lot of barriers. Going back to, there are 30 different boards at our school, and each of those boards are individually housed by one individual. And every year, our advancement team has to talk to each of those individuals and try to get that most up-to-date board list. Some situations they're able to get that really quickly. Other situations it takes them months to collect that, and they have to kind of plan ahead. Sometimes if they know they need to get that report out by end of October, they're needing to ask that and say May for the information. And so what we've been able to do is having once we haven't been able to solve fully, being able to have to seek down that information just yet. but we are now having Salesforce as the home of that data. So all that data is integrated into Salesforce, which is super powerful. We're basically taking those spreadsheets, doing a manual upload every August, September to have that data into Salesforce. But where it becomes super powerful is now that data is in there, people can then start seeing who's on these different boards. Someone's maybe on 3 different boards from there, which is really, really powerful. And where some ideas that have been floated around is how can Salesforce actually be the aggregator of that? So we're kind of trying to take that spreadsheet that we're having and trying to build out processes from there. Our given history, that lives in our donor management system. And so that lives in a separate system. We're not going to pull that into Salesforce, but it's there. They can pull that very quickly. We also have these the projects, these site visits and speakers. We've created objects in Salesforce to track that information. And that's been really powerful to have that information in Salesforce for us. This is just one of those kind of post the slide when we get the slide shared, when we do the videos after this, just a chance to see that information. You'll be able to see all that information, that just to have a screenshot from there. Kind of match it. We're on the EDA model. We also are anything that's in yellow are kind of our custom objects that we've built. Kind of just the high level mention is that we've done a lot of kind of custom objects to do point solutions of what something may be. I think I've seen others do kind of one object to drill them all. We're trying to separate those out, and that's worked for us. All right, so this field of dreams, it's happening. It is happening. And what does that mean? Well, when we've been starting to talk to these people, one spreadsheet leads to more spreadsheets. And so when we started to get with that one spreadsheet from the career services that they were doing with that the activity tracking, well, that was a pretty big spreadsheet that we moved over. Well, then we started to talk to them more about, well, then they have event attendance that they had tracked for their different events that they house. Okay, well, that's a spreadsheet. Okay, well, we can do that. What are the 3 spreadsheets there? And then we started to talk more about them, and we started to realize that they also have other spreadsheets from out to the advisory boards. And so that one spreadsheet that we asked for initially has led to probably 10 different spreadsheets, and in some cases, some integrations, because we learned that they're just literally doing a spreadsheet for the sake of not having integration. So we can then pinpoint and solve some of those. We also can change these systems. And so going back to that grad leaders and handshake example, as systems change, the desire need to transfer that data into Salesforce isn't as important. And what I mean by that is because we can say dump all of the grad leaders data into Salesforce now, we can have the grad leaders as well as the handshake data side by side for career services to have that holistic view, say the last 10-year view, versus needing to figure out should we integrate that into take the historical data, import it into the next solution. It doesn't necessarily mean that you should or shouldn't, but we've kind of found out that we can use Salesforce as that legacy system from there, and that's been really powerful. And with this grassroots model of take some spreadsheets, take some systems, integrate them, we've really been able to get a lot of good executive buy-in and support from there. We have a new dean in this last year, and they're very, very interested in what we're doing as a whole. And there's, I think where the direction that we're seeing this all go is transforming from this grassroots idea of, kind of not necessarily the best kept secret on campus on who's, talk to Nick and he'll make stuff happen. But, it's kind of been word of mouth when things have happened previously where, hey, talk to Nick, he'll make something happen for us, to having the dean and others having some forms of mandates or direction of, hey, this is the direction that we're going to go. Data is going to live in Salesforce for everyone, not just the departments that have grabbed a hold of so far. And so those that maybe haven't been excited about our Salesforce instance, they're able, because it's a shared model, things like that. This executive buy-in is kind of going to force that hand a bit. And we're really excited to see where that goes for us. All right, so what's been some of our secret sauce to make this happen? Well, first, one of the things that we've created is an object called external systems. And what this does is instead of having a field to track, say, the handshake ID, or a field to track, say, our modern campus ID on a given record, we have an object to track those records. Because what we found out is that when we take, say, financial institutions are really big for this, where you have different bank branches and advisory branches and all of those different things. Well, we've gone the model of, we really only care about that parent record. And so if there's a branch or advisory office of sorts for, say, a financial services company, all those are going to roll into the same account, but then we can have each of those unique IDs for matching and for integrations live in this external system object. So this is just a table of records or table of IDs for us. It also is a way to do a staging table and have data that lives in that record. So when we're doing integrations, it will populate this, it'll do some matching and run some magic from there. So this object can be really powerful. We could probably do a whole presentation just on this, but we won't for today. The next thing that we've been starting to, we built out was a ability to track all the different departments and the quote unquote owners for those. We thought about using account teams, but when we looked at reporting and what we were wanting to do with it, account teams didn't do exactly what we wanted. But as we were talking to our departments, we started to learn that each department had their own point of contact or main point of contact for each of the companies. And so here's just one of the examples, and just to kind of show, in this case, we have 6 different departments that claim themselves to have a point in contact for this. Well, that can get complicated when we're starting to talk about who actually owns this record or who's doing work with them. And so we've gone the route of transparency and allowing people to mark themselves or have departments mark who is the owner or the lead rather of that account on this page here. We also are tracking the last activity date. So we're doing a lot of activity tracking in Salesforce. So when's the last time that a department has talked to that account? And that can be powerful too, because sometimes maybe you don't have a lead, but maybe someone is tracking, they log in that call. And so we can have kind of this a double whammy of who's working with who and when have they last talked to them. And what we've seen is with having this ability, we're creating ways for allow people to collaborate with one another. And that's been really big for us, where they can start talking and going, oh, well, Patrick and Kathy are both leads. Let's talk out to Brian or talk to Brian to see if we can do something together. And so we're starting to see kind of that collaboration of just having names of who owns who front and center for us. The other thing that we've been able to use, and this is kind of just standard Salesforce, I won't do too much about, we've been really using Salesforce to track those account changes and really build processes or videos around how to do this. And so with us in the EDA model, we're using that primary business organization field to track where does someone work. And then the affiliated accounts is our place to track where have they worked in the past. And so when I'm meeting with people, I kind of talk about, okay, the primary business organization is where are they currently working. That affiliated accounts is kind of the LinkedIn history from there. This does require our team to be manually updating Salesforce because we don't have any magic integration to pull in that data from LinkedIn in that level. But because we've seen people wanting to get things like reporting and or having abilities to just know who's working where at a drop of a need, having this information has been really powerful. And I mean, people have just bought into that idea of, okay, well, let's update Salesforce for that. You probably saw that ERD slide previously where we had a lot of different objects in Salesforce, and what that can come into issues when you're wanting to track where did someone work at the point in time that they did set activities. So in some cases, maybe who did they work for when they spoke here? Who did they work for when they mentored someone here? Who did they work for when they were on a board? And so we went the model of every one of those objects has an account lookup to the employer. And that is super powerful for us, because instead of having to try to transverse and look at relationships and go to the accounts and try to compare the dates and things like that when we're doing, our users are updating Salesforce, we're doing a lot of information from, or having that data live front and center on that record. And it has been really beneficial to what we'll show in a few moments here about some of the Tableau work that we've done. But this kind of the concept is everyone gets an account lookup, and we've seen our users be able to populate this as well. In some cases, we just get spreadsheets of the historical data, and so we're able to comb through that, whether it be via emails or from the columns that they have in there. We can do very similar work from there. Some of the things that we've been doing now that we are in Salesforce and kind of working in Salesforce is really trying to figure out how can we stay front of mind with our stakeholders, with our departments. And first off, we've established with every department that we've worked with recurring check-ins. The frequency of that changes by their needs. In some cases, there's weekly meetings that we still have and have been doing for 5 years. In other cases, there's quarterly meetings that are maybe happening that have kind of fluctuated around. We try to meet the needs of what the department and how complex the build is that we've done with them. And so those recurring check-ins are just a way to stay front of mind, touch base on what issues they may have, talk about new things that we have going for others, and try to figure out what else we can do for them. Some cases, it actually comes down to learning about what other spreadsheets that they're doing, and then we in turn import those in. We also talk about how do we solve these communication needs. We're doing a lot within Salesforce as a CRM to connect with our Marketing Cloud instance. Because of our setup between those two, it's a full custom integration, but our concept is the more that we can have in Salesforce to track the list someone is a part of, the better we can have for information from there. So we've been doing a lot with that. We've also been hosting a Salesforce Showcase. So this is our chance for our users to show to others at our school what have we built for them, why is it important, what is it doing, how is it solving them the daily life. And so that showcase has been really powerful and pretty good, well attended from there. And then as we've been building this, kind of as we're trying to keep that flywheel building and growing, we were sharing these updates with Advanced and the Dean. And so every time we got a new integration, every time we got a new department on, we were letting them know to keep them up to date and kind of keep going back to it. It was grassroots. So we just were kind of trying to get them buying into, and they're very thankful of that continuing conversation. We also had some staff transitions that's bound to happen, but that really led to opportunities. So we would use that to get buy-in from different folks. And we also were able to train them on how the process worked. And so maybe the person before them wasn't really into Salesforce. Well, we had a chance to reset with these staff transitions, and that was had created a lot of opportunities for us. All right, I'm going to get us over to some reporting abilities and where we're going or where we've been able to solve a lot of things from here. First off, we're doing a lot within Salesforce, standard Salesforce. We have a lot of data that lives in there. We have a lot of situations where someone's just asking for something as like how proof of concept, or the people they're wanting to have it live in Salesforce. And so that's when we've been using Salesforce. If the data all lives in there, the people that are wanting to view it all live in Salesforce, we're going to use Salesforce as much as possible. I kind of like to solve it as an 80-20 rule. And so if we're able to solve it 80% of the way there, let's try Salesforce. And so majority of our reporting lives in Salesforce that's related to our corporate relations tracking and anything else tracking. We do have Tableau, and that's been really powerful for us for some of the information that I'll show here in a couple slides. And what that has been used for is for when we can't necessarily get the data to integrate easily with Salesforce. In some cases, or we just say, hey, we don't want that data in Salesforce. That's too much data to have in Salesforce. And as well as some situations where just Salesforce reporting out of the box doesn't do what we want. And so we're using Tableau for that. We've also had some situations where we say, hey, yeah, 80% of the way there, let's solve it, let's make it work. But then when we start working with them, we realize that they need 100%. It needs to look this way. It needs to shoot confetti on the page, whatever it may be, that we've used Tableau. We've kind of said, okay, let's go to Tableau, make that happen. So here's just a snapshot of some slide that we have in our org that's related to our career services team. They can look at, here's the department or the accounts they own, the recent activities they own, as well as some of that handshake data that lives in Salesforce for them. So just kind of a page of lists that live in Salesforce for them. And really, this has been powerful for them to see that aggregated view in Salesforce. We're also having similar data points, but in a dashboard form where we're slicing and dicing this information from the last handful of fiscal years, going back to how we've been doing some of that cleaning of data that maybe wasn't exactly the way we wanted in those source systems, so we can clean that and get it in the way that they want from there. All right, so this is where kind of the destination, where we were able to go with this. By using Tableau, we were able to create a view in Salesforce that pulls up Salesforce data as well as Slate data and other data that 3A I was showing earlier. And we can have that, this actually lives as a embedded Tableau report on a Salesforce record. And this has been really powerful for our advancement team that's now using Salesforce to go in and see that records from there. Just a quick show how that all works. There's within a Lightning page, there's a Tableau View tab that you can drop and drag over. Kind of the big things that you need to have are the URL of said form, as well as a way to filter on that record. And so we've created a field in Salesforce as well as Tableau called Clean Name that's kind of tying those names together one for one, because we're going back to our tying Slate data, so I can't necessarily just take IDs. I have to use name data from there. On the Tableau side, this is just a quick snapshot of how it looks. There's that clean name filter that we're taking there and able to apply those filters and make stuff happen, make the magic happen from there. The other report we've been able to use in Tableau is not necessarily just that one pager, but having a details view. And this has been really powerful for those non-Salesforce users where they can't see all that data that we have aggregated in Salesforce. And so we're able to kind of list view out the key data points that someone may care about, going back to those 3 different E's. And so this has been really powerful for them. And ironically, the more we show this, the more times we hear, how about can this get added, or can this get added? And also the more times we want to look at, can we slice and dice it a little different way? We've recently created one very similar to this that's for the focus on the current year. And so it's not to say, okay, let's look at the last 5 years, let's look at the current year. And so this view has allowed us to really slice and dice the information from there. Here's a continuation of that and a lot of good stuff from there. All right, some final thoughts before we get into Q&A and questions. Results may vary. There's a lot of, it's kind of a choose your adventure in terms of how you want to do this, how you need to have it happen. The results may vary for you in terms of just grassroots work. Do you need the dean buy-in? Everything can vary. There's always a spreadsheet. There's always a spreadsheet, and I'll just leave it at that. You never know what you'll find when you get that spreadsheet. And lastly, just kind of the parting thought for you is to find that secret sauce. Figure out what is it that can make your org work. What is it that can make your org tick for others at the school? All right, with that, we're going to open it up for questions here, and we can go from there.
Great. Thanks so much, Nick. Loved your presentation. Can definitely relate to all of those spreadsheets. I think the question I'm seeing the most has to do with integrating with Handshake. Could you say a little more about if you're able to pull that data in or how that's working?
Yeah, ironically, actually, we have I've done a video, it's probably on YouTube about this with a few others about how we're integrating Handshake and Salesforce together. So feel free to go out there. The high level is that we're taking Handshake reports that are scheduled we're doing at the company level. So company job postings, events, and visits, we're flowing that data over to an AWS server via the nightly reporting functionality that lives in Handshake. And then our Boomi tool is picking that up and then transforming that to get into Salesforce. I'll see if I can find that video here in a pinch while we keep going with the Q&A.
Great, good stuff. Some questions about the spreadsheets here. Did you find any that weren't the effort to set up the integrations, or how do you weigh the level of effort against the efficiency gain?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of gone the route of all spreadsheets matter and let's get all the spreadsheets in there. And so that's the route we've gone. At the same time, we've also gone the route of the more they talk about it, the more likely we're going to try to integrate or try to replace those. We try to play off the sense of them too. We've had some people that are really tied to their spreadsheets and they're not wanting to replace. They just want to try to have the data store. So we try to work with where they're at. Others are just like, yeah, I'm fine. Let's get rid of it. And so we try to work with where they're at. in their attachment to said spreadsheet before we try to plan our plan of attack from there.
Great. And then just our final minute here, there are some questions about the structure of your team and the environment that you work in. Could you share a little bit more about the size of your team, developers, business analysts, admins, and then if all of those different departments roll up to one dean, or how that's structured?
Totally. Yeah. So in terms of our structure, there's an element of it's me, myself, and I, as well as a supporting cast of characters that all live within our careers, our Carlson School IT department. So I'm the main Salesforce builder, business analysts, do all things there. I work on an IT team of 5 of us that we each support different apps. And so we have a Slate person, we have a reporting person, we have a project manager, we have a website person. And so we all kind of support our own little domains, but then we cross-function. And so some of the individuals have different abilities, whether it be on the developer level. And so when we run into situations that we need to have more sophisticated work that's called upon, I can call on them to make stuff happen.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I saw you put the link to that YouTube video in the chat there, so folks can go ahead and check that out for additional learning. And yeah, and this was all recorded too, so will be available. And next up, we have our sponsor 5 in 5 interviews happening at 10:35. More great sessions for today. So thank you, Nick, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.